What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, February 12th, 2021. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today. As usual, we're going to do news until I run out of news. Then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments and questions and observations and opinions. Mike, as usual, is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. Again, we're looking at, this very icy weather all over the country, a lot of traffic jams, a lot of accidents, and apparently, at least here in Indiana, we're going to get a really big wallop apparently on Monday is what they're saying. So, again, don't drive unless you absolutely have to, and if you have to, have a little winter supply emergency kit in the car, a little heating, those little gel things, you twist them and they get hot, keep your hands warm, things like that. Just take care of yourself here. Getting into the news here, obviously the big news is it's day 4 of President Trump's second impeachment trial. And now the team of lawyers for Donald Trump is going to counter the Democrats' claims. Now, the Democrats' case has been very, very weak. They didn't call witnesses. They had that wonderfully edited video, which really doesn't make the case simply because of the fact it has been edited. And the Democrats are now taking the approach that it's up to his defense to prove that he did not incite the events in the Capitol on January 6th. Now, of course, that flies in the face of American jurisprudence, where one is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. So the Democrats are trying to return to Code Napoleon here and put the burden of proof on the defensive team. And the defensive team, all they have to do is create a reasonable doubt, and assuming that Congress isn't bought, or rather the Senate isn't bought or blackmailed or bribed, then he should be acquitted. Maybe there's been a new development we're going to get to here. Joe Biden is out there saying he's waiting to see if his Republican friends in the Senate will stand up to Donald Trump. And apparently he made a surprise visit to the White House lawn to see Jill's Valentine's Day message. Not really much of a trip when you consider it here. Okay, here's the development. This came out earlier today. And apparently what happened, I got to stop using that word. What happened is that 15 Republican senators did not show up today. And it sort of came and went, but you need to really think about what's going on. First of all, if you're in a jury trial, which is what this is, and you're a juror, you're not allowed to just step on out and decide not to show up. They'll send the sheriffs after you here. But you need to basically go back to your Constitution, to Article 1, Section 3, where it talks about the impeachment process. And here's where it gets interesting. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. We know that that's not happening. And this is the part that's important. No person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. In other words, under the letter of the Constitution, all the senators do not have to be there. And if enough GOP senators simply refuse to show up, then the Democrats will have the 2/3 majority to convict. And I'd like the names of those 15 Judas GOP senators who are just bailing on out, because you can see what it is. They don't want to vote to convict. Because that's going to work against them next election. So they simply stay home that day and they allow Trump to be convicted by the Democrats. And they just, not my fault, I didn't show up here. But that's, I think, is what they're getting ready to try and do. Now, interestingly enough, going back to the events of January 6th, it turns out that both of the groups that have been charged with conspiracy to storm the Capitol building were led by FBI assets. One of them was the Oath Keepers. And apparently, a man that is a leader of the Oath Keepers apparently has held a top secret security clearance for decades and has previously worked for the FBI, this according to his attorney. Then we have the Proud Boys. And it came out only a little while ago that the leader of the Proud Boys is also an FBI informant who used to work on undercover stings since 2012. The whole thing was theater. It was a staged setup. So, all right, now getting into non-impeachment news here. President Joe Biden's nomination of Victoria Nuland for Undersecretary of Political Affairs, this is the third highest position at the State Department, is a dangerous sign because Nuland has had her hand in every single U.S. intervention of the past 30 years. If you want to know where the next trouble spot is going to be, just ask, where is Victoria Nuland today? Because that's what comes, and it basically underscores the Biden administration plans on more wars, more destabilizations, more regime change, more of your kids going on out to get shot at, more of your tax dollars being wasted on things that go bang. Over in France, an interesting observation. They have been looking at the woke leftism taking root here in America on campuses. They're looking at the cancel culture, and they're starting to see the same thing emerge in educational institutions in France. And Macron is very, very concerned. They consider it a foreign threat and a threat to the national cohesiveness of France. And so the New York Times was out there saying the threat is said to be existential. It fuels secessionism. It gnaws at national unity, abets Islamism, attacks France's intellectual and cultural heritage. Interestingly enough, that the New York Times doesn't point out the damage that woke leftism and cancel culture are doing right here in the United States of America. Over in Philadelphia, we're trying to look at what's going on in these various cities that are under Democratic leadership here. Apparently, Philadelphia homicides are up 55% so far this year, following a violent Monday in which 7 died. And 7 people lost their lives in shootings on Monday, including a 15-year-old boy who was shot and killed in South Philadelphia. So last Monday, the Philadelphia Police Department had reported 62 homicides in Philadelphia. That's up 55% over the same date in 2020. So anyway, it's an ugly, ugly situation. Let's talk a little bit about COVID. It is still definitely out there. And here is a very, very interesting story. This is coming to us from humansarefree.com. There was a school district in Ohio that had to cancel classes because too many of the school staff developed adverse reactions to the COVID mRNA vaccines. The employees were given their first round of COVID-19 vaccinations 2 days later. They were developing side effects and becoming ill. That was about the time interval for my doctor, who got her first shot, and 3 days later, she was ill. And in most cases, as much as 80% of the eligible employees are accepting the vaccinations. So Medina County Schools canceled classes today to allow employees to be vaccinated on the same day. Other districts are choosing to have their max vaccinations over the weekend. Biden is now out there saying Americans will have to wear face masks up to next year, 2022. And he says that the experts he is talking to are saying it will take until Thanksgiving to hit herd immunity. And I got to tell you, that's the shark for me. That is definitely jumping the shark. And I assume they all own stock in the companies that make these face masks, and they're raking in the dough, which is why all of a sudden we're hearing about, oh, no, just one mask is not good enough. You've got to have 2, got to have 3. There was one suggestion wearing 4 masks. I mean, it's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins here. Interestingly enough, Pfizer has now bailed out of India because India's Central Drugs Standard Control Organization demanded safety testing for the COVID vaccines. And they formed this subject expert committee to discuss Pfizer's proposal for the emergency use authorization of the experimental vaccine. And the committee noted the incidence of Bell's palsy, anaphylaxis, and other adverse events that have been reported during the testing or application of the drug. And so Pfizer has basically withdrawn its application, and they're going to take their party someplace else. Dr. J. Patrick Wellen, who's a pediatric rheumatologist, apparently last December warned the FDA that these mRNA vaccines could cause microvascular injury to the brain, heart, liver, and kidneys in ways not assessed in the safety trials. And the problem is the protein spikes on the vaccine can cause these blood clots, brain inflammation, and heart attacks, which has been reported as an adverse effect of these vaccines. California's native coronavirus variant, if you want to call it that, has now spread to 19 states and 6 other countries, but scientists still have no idea if it is more infectious, less infectious, deadly, not deadly, or whether it can evade the current round of vaccines. A little bit of good news here. The New York State Assembly majority is considering rescinding the emergency powers granted to Governor Cuomo to manage the coronavirus pandemic after a top aide admitted the administration had hid damning information about deaths among the nursing home patients. Getting ugly over there. By the way, if you wear a lot of jewelry and you use that hand sanitizer, we're getting word from jewelers, jewelry experts. Apparently, the alcohol inside the hand sanitizer can actually damage the jewelry. It can dim the sheen of various gemstones, especially amber. We learned that one the hard way. And they've come out with cleaning tips to make everything from costume pieces to full-on diamonds sparkle again. So it's very, very damaging material. Wednesday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Instagram account was deplatformed with no advance notice. Now, media outlets reporting on the censorship asserted the account was removed over false COVID vaccine claims or vaccine misinformation. Some reports referred to Kennedy as an anti-vaxxer. Now, he has been a critic of vaccines for a long time, and justifiably so. But Kennedy is rejecting these claims, saying these characterizations are false and misleading. As Kennedy has said many times, for a democracy to function, civil debate of issues, including vaccine science, must be allowed. Censorship of that debate is anathema to democracy. In other words, it is tyranny. It is dictatorship. All right, turning to the international news here. The issue of torture of Palestinian prisoners is up in the news again, primarily because of the recent decision by the International Criminal Court, which Israel and the U.S. and a bunch of other countries are trying to convince them, no, please, Israel's suffered so much, don't get on their case. But according to this article over in Israel-Palestine News, it is time to end Israel's impunity, and they are absolutely correct. No other nation on planet Earth is allowed to get away with what Israel gets away with. And it really is time to hold them to account for what they have been doing. Over in London, UCL's academic board voted in favor of urging the University Council to retract its adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, as it is not for purpose within a university setting and has no legal basis for enforcement. Now, for those of you coming late to the game here, the IHRA came out with a definition of anti-Semitism, which includes criticism of the government of Israel. That's their point of view, that any criticism of the government of Israel is rooted in hatred of the Jewish people, which is kind of like saying that any criticism of the Nazis is rooted in hatred of Germans. It just doesn't make any sense. We're not talking about people, we're talking about actions. And we're not talking about all people, all Jews or all Germans, we're talking about the actions of a very few in positions of power. So I'm glad this university is looking at pulling back, because it is an absolutely ridiculous definition of anti-Semitism, and it's been created solely to give the government of Israel immunity for things which, as I said before, any other country on planet Earth would be held to account. This story is just now breaking out. It's from the drive.com, and this is causing a huge amount of upset within Israel itself. A group of more than 20 Israelis, including former defense officials, are now under investigation for allegedly designing, producing, and selling armed loitering missiles, also known as suicide drones, to an unnamed Asian country. And this was illegal for them to do under Israeli law. The news comes less than 2 weeks after the announcement of 3 legitimate sales of these kinds of weapons by the Israeli arms industries, including 2 unnamed Asian countries. They're playing fast and loose down there. Story coming on out of Israel-Palestine News again, talking about how the media continues to crack down on critics of Israel. And when they say critics of Israel, they're talking about critics of the government of Israel and the actions of that government. Nobody is criticizing the people of Israel as a whole. Nobody's criticizing the country of Israel. We're talking about the actions of a government. And under the First Amendment to our Constitution, we have the right to criticize actions of government, any government, anywhere on planet Earth. But the corporate media just absolutely protects Israel whenever anybody stands up and says what they're doing is against international law. It's a violation of treaties. And they say, oh, no, you're just showing off your Jew hatred here. So let's get into some economic news. Some of this is left over from yesterday. We were struggling to get through the talking points. And we know the airlines have been hit hard because of the coronavirus pandemic, and the general downturn in the economy, where fewer people are traveling by air. And we're starting to see airlines abandon the business hubs and start to reroute flights to tropical areas. Apparently, business travel has taken such a hit, they're sort of retailoring their flight routes to more vacation zones. And this is including airlines such as United, Delta, and American Airlines, and travelers departing from Boston, Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis have noticed an abundance of nonstop flights to warmer regions in Florida like Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, Orlando, Key West, and Tampa. So they're trying to adapt, they're trying to survive. Very alarming story. This is coming out of Need to Know News. The Biden administration is launching a technocratic war on America's food supply and accelerating a global collapse in food production. This is being done by paying farmers not to grow food, something the Department of Agriculture has done for many, many years, which makes sense in a climate of overproduction and overabundance. But in the current situation, it doesn't really make sense unless somebody is trying to engineer a famine on purpose in order to further control us. So the Department of Agriculture has been ordered to pursue a zero growth policy. They're placing restrictions on grocery stores, restaurants, and meatpacking plants. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network does need your continuing support so that we can go on keeping Americans fully informed so that they can make good choices. And once again, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. And of course, all of that contact information can be found at the top of republicbroadcasting.org. Getting on back to the economic news, we've all been following the upset, the turmoil, the after effect of the GameStop manipulation, if you will. And there's an interesting article over in Ellen Brown's website about how the gamers' uprising against Wall Street is really rooted in populism, which is something that Wall Street and Washington, D.C. do not like. They don't like populism. So this whole short squeeze frenzy captured financial headlines, actually captured headlines all over in recent weeks, and it's centered on a struggling strip mall video game store called GameStop. The internet and a year off and this shutdown to study up have given a younger generation of investors the tools to compete in the market with the big hedge funds. And people, understand that Wall Street is rigged for the Wall Street bankers. They're learning how to fight back. They're playing by the rules Wall Street created. Nobody has done anything that's illegal. They're just, playing the game better than the Wall Street players are. And I think that's a very, very good thing. Would help deal with the wealth inequality, which is at epidemic levels in this country. Over in China, there is a bankrupt solar firm that managed to sell $117 million in shares overnight. And that's a remarkable placement. Especially considering that GCL New Energy Holdings is technically bankrupt, having defaulted on a $500 million bond just last week. I wonder if they're tied in with the Bidens. Has anybody seen Hunter lately? This one is really interesting, and it's indicative of how bad things are getting out there. Condé Nast is a well-known publisher. They have a 25-year lease in World Trade Center, in One World Trade, and they missed their last rent payment. And they're being crushed by slumping ad revenue because of the pandemic and because of the deteriorating economy. And their monthly rent at One World Trade is $2.4 million. And the Wall Street Journal is saying they weren't able to pay it. And they're a major anchor tenant in the World Trade Center. Things are getting really bad. Okay, let's talk about immigration. I'm going to do a story here that Tom in Florida is absolutely going to love. And it's a story that's coming out of the Epic Times. And it's talking about an angel mob who says Biden is creating a super highway to the border. Now, this is a mother out in Arizona whose son was killed by an illegal alien. And she is saying that the Biden administration's border policies are going to create more angel families. Inevitably, yes. And the angel families, as Tom has told us, are relatives of those who've been killed by illegal immigrants. So this Mary Ann Mendoza was interviewed February 8th and says she'd been speaking out on this for 5.5 years now. Her son Brandon was killed in a 2014 car crash caused by an illegal immigrant who was drunk, high on meth, and speeding along a Mesa, Arizona highway in the wrong direction. Really just couldn't get worse than that if he had wired the car with explosives. Meanwhile, Biden has canceled President Trump's emergency declaration directing $25 billion to fund the construction of new and replacement fencing at the U.S.-Mexico border. And Biden, in a letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, said, "I have determined that the declaration of a national emergency at our southern border was unwarranted." Well, you're wrong about that one, Joe. So they're going to be pouring on in here, and they will always vote Democratic, and that's it. The Democrats are willing to sacrifice American values, American style of living, American safety, in exchange for more votes. That's it. That's how corrupt they have become. The Biden administration has gone so far as opening a tent city in Texas for the immigrants. It's built in Donna, Texas, because there are something like 25,000 illegal immigrants getting ready to pour over that border. All right, we'll be right back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about immigration issues. There's a story over at Blabber Buzz that is reminding us all that what is coming across that border extends beyond the actual illegal immigrants themselves. And they're talking about how Border Patrol agents in Texas stopped 2 human smuggling attempts in commercial vehicles. These are vehicles where they have trailers, and they use these non-intrusive scans, and they discover illegal aliens hidden inside. And they were from Mexico and Guatemala. Among them was a sentenced sex offender. You know, we're not exactly getting the best of the people from those host countries. Immigration is a filtering operation. The people who are making it in their own country, they tend to stay there. Years ago, Israel tried to offer money to Jews living in Iran to migrate to Israel, and the Jews in Iran said, "No, we're comfortable here. We've got businesses here. We've got one of the world's longest continually functioning synagogues. We're represented in the government. Why would we leave that?" And so the ones who are trying to come up to the border here are people who can't make it in their own country. They're fleeing prosecution. They're fleeing jail, like this sex offender. Many of them are seeking free medical care, and as a result, we need to be testing them for various illnesses, including COVID, but that is not being done. And many illnesses that had previously been eradicated in this country are starting to show up again, like tuberculosis. There's even been one case of the plague that showed up. All it's going to take is somebody to bring Ebola into this country, and things are going to get really, really crazy. Forget about the masks. It's going to be full-body suits. Story coming on out from uns.com, and it's commenting on something that we've mentioned many times before, that in liberal-run cities, things tend to be worse than in conservative-run areas. This article is talking about the racial disparities in arrests and police shootings are highest in the liberal cities. And it says the top of the list of the biggest disparities is dominated by famously liberal cities such as Washington, D.C., Seattle, and San Francisco. The bottom of the list is Detroit, where hardly any white people live anymore anyway, and then the more conservative towns of Fresno and El Paso, which probably have to do with the white-Hispanic confusion. But again, it's the liberals don't do a good job of running their cities, counties, and states, and they so far are not doing a really good job running this country. Interestingly enough, PBS just ran a documentary suggesting that we need more overweight women of color as police officers. And we had another story along a similar line. I think we talked about it yesterday, where police departments are now looking for older recruits, female recruits, on the idea they're going to be less likely to simply draw the gun and pull the trigger, which has been a big problem for police departments over the last year. So Apparently, it was the killing of a white woman, a yoga instructor, Justin DeMond, by the Minneapolis Police Department's celebrated first black Somali man cop, Mohammed Noor, that really started saying we need to be careful who we're recruiting, and we can't just say, oh, we're going to make you a cop because you're a person of color, or you're this minority, you're a trans, or something like that. We really need to go back to meritocracy, and I know that's completely opposed by the woke liberal agenda. Meritocracy is considered a sign of white supremacy. But you know, when I'm flying in an airplane, I want the pilot to be the best in his class. If I'm in the hospital, I want the doctor operating on me to have been the very best in his class. I mean, doesn't that just make common sense? You know, I don't want to be in the hospital and look up and see that somebody who fit a checklist of minority groups and so forth holding that scalpel. It's going to be making me very, very nervous. The cancel culture is continuing. Apparently in London, Mayor Sadiq Khan has appointed a rogues gallery of woke partisans as a task force to review the statues and landmarks in the city to see if they are diverse enough. And what they're doing is they're trying to erase history, so that all the next generation knows is what's fed to them by government propagandists and the school. They don't want people going around looking at statues and plaques and monuments and saying, well, what was this all about? Okay, and here's where it gets really, really silly. There's a story that's coming on out of Russia today about how they're starting to apply gender-neutral terms to things like raising children. Apparently, breastfeeding is now banned as a term. It's being called chest feeding to appease the trans tyrants. Women are erased from childbirth. It's no longer called mother's milk or breast milk. It's called chest milk. And you know, they're ditching badges like mother, and it's silly. They're trying to make everybody think they're virtually identical, which is generally something tyrants tend to do. Over in the North Dakota House of Representatives, we talked about they were considering this. They actually passed this bill yesterday, banning student athletes from participating on sports teams based on their gender preference. In other words, if you were born a man, you compete on the male teams. If you're born a woman, you compete on the women's team. Finally, some common sense breaking out there in the heartland. Another article, this more about the cancel culture, also from Russia Today. There's an academic out there saying that the classics, the foundation of Western thought, need to be cut from university education because it's so entangled with white supremacy. And they're talking about how Aristotle and Plato need to be unpersoned. This is coming from Dan L. Padilla Peralta, who's a black academic and claims that Western civilization is based on conceptions of whiteness that come from interpretation of these ancient authors. Well, who does he feel we should replace Plato and Aristotle with? There's a long silence on that one. And this leads to the next article. This is from Blacklisted News. We have been talking for a long time about the deliberate dumbing down of America, and this article is saying it's poised to accelerate. It's going to be happening faster. We talked about this the other day. Andre Kessler at the Wall Street Journal is saying that mediocrity is now mandatory. You're not allowed to excel. You're not allowed to do better than everybody else around you. In January, the College Board announced it will eliminate the essay portion of the SAT, as well as all of the separate SAT subject tests. The purpose is supposed to be reducing and simplifying demands on students. Now, when the University of California did away with racial preferences in 1996, it moved to holistic admissions. Grades are only suggestions, and SAT scores are biased, according to the activists. So it really is education. It's no longer about education. It's about indoctrination. Children are not being taught to think. They're being taught to believe, to hold the opinions that are being handed to them by their political masters. We saw that really on full display with the human-caused global warming crowd, where you'd go up to some of these people and you'd give them the real science and explain why what was being said in the media didn't make any sense, and they just stand there and say, well, I believe what's in the media. The world is doomed and Al Gore is God. Getting into computers and stuff, this is an interesting story. It's actually a warning. This is coming from Big League Politics. And recent court documents have indicated that the FBI has a system that allows them to access encrypted messages on the Signal app. Now, the Signal app is very popular because of its promised privacy, but it keeps you private from everybody except that person you most want to keep out of your life, which is the government. But apparently, from documents filed by the Department of Justice and first obtained by Forbes, Signal's encrypted messages can be intercepted from iPhone devices when those Apple devices are in a mode called partial AFU, which means after first unlock. So they're hacking into your devices to spy on what you're doing. Nothing really of interest in my iPhone, so waste of time there. Out in Los Angeles, there's this 90-year-old resident who spent $10,000 to take out 2 quarter-page newspaper ads to tell AT&T's CEO that his internet service was too slow. And boy, did the CEO get on the phone to him quickly. And I have a feeling that at least this one individual's internet service is now going to be up to par. That really is a very common issue when you will buy an internet service and they'll say 100 megabits per second, we don't throttle, and all the other stuff. And then you actually get on the system and you test it and you find out you're not getting anywhere near what you were promised or are supposedly paying for. And it's probably one of the reasons people are lining up for Starlink. And I'm sorry that you have to be sort of glued to your home to use Starlink because there's an outdoor antenna, everything. It won't work with a handheld device or a laptop. But I'm, starting to think that maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing for me to have either. Meanwhile, according to this story from Ameren.com, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin faces an early test as he races to advance a major initiative targeting far-right extremism in the ranks. And they want to basically identify far-right extremists in the ranks and possibly get rid of them, which means our military will be made up of far-left fanatics who really can't handle a rifle because they're still trying to figure out what restroom they're supposed to be using. So Austin's highly unusual order for this military-wide stand-down, slated to pause normal operations in coming weeks so troops can discuss internal support for extremist movements, underscores the urgency of the task ahead for the former 4-star general. You look at what they're doing to our Army at a time when we are very obviously heading to more wars. All the Army should be thinking about is going on out there, accomplishing the mission, obeying their orders, and figuring out how to get home in one piece. And all this other transgender nonsense and left-wing, right-wing stuff really doesn't have a place there at all. Most military tend not to discuss their political views anyway. It's seen as not in keeping with the military image. Story coming on out of Task and Purpose. 3 years after unveiling its new fitness test as gender neutral, the Army is considering a change to the Army Combat Fitness Test that would score soldiers on a service-wide percentile separated by gender. So somebody over there finally woke up to the fact that overall, men are stronger physically than women. It's always been that way. Yes, there are exceptions. There are very strong women. There are very weak men. But overall, overall, evolution has produced a larger, stronger male and a less capable female. Now, I don't have a problem with women in the military. I think they're ideally suited for any of the mechanized forces where their physical limitations aren't a problem. Tank Corps, aviation, Navy, things like that. But out there on infantry slugging along trying to carry boxes of ammunition, they are going to be running at a disadvantage with their male counterparts. But good that somebody is out there saying that, yes, this is a reality we have to deal with. Over at the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has very little to do with poverty and even less to do with the law, it claims it's dedicated to fighting hate. But in the name of equity, the Southern Poverty Law Center announced it's shutting down its Black nationalist hate groups category, like the Nation of Islam. They're not going to monitor Black hate groups anymore. Only the white hate groups deserve the attention of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And if the Southern Poverty Law Center had any credibility left, it just went into the shredder. Over in Victoria, Australia, they've passed new legislation. It's still waiting for the Governor General's signature. It's been passed that will prohibit anything other than full affirmation of child transgenderism. And the bill is known as the Change or Suppression Conversion Practices Prohibition. The bill makes it illegal to try to change or suppress a person's perceived sexual orientation or gender identity, even if that person seeks out treatment and consents to it. Now, this is similar to a bill passed in Queensland last year, and it prohibits all harmful practices that might offend anyone in the LGBTQP community. That includes carrying out a religious practice, a prayer-based practice, a deliverance practice, or even an exorcism. That is just really getting out there. Out in California, once again, leading the nation, they are about to become the first state to make removing a condom during sex without consent illegal and allow victims of stealthing to sue for damages. Now, apparently, they have a real problem in California. Men get together with women, they're wearing a condom, and then halfway through, they get rid of the condom because it's not comfortable. And now they're passing this law where if a woman or if a male partner discovers the condom has been removed, it is now classed as sexual battery and they can sue for damages. I foresee a future where everybody in California is going to play it safe with inflatable love dolls. Because they're taking basic human interactions and they're turning it into another litigation arena. Which I think is, I think it's destabilizing our society. When you take moral decisions and place them with the courts, it's destabilizing. We're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with more news right after these words. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're looking at an article, this is from Madness Hub, and it's talking about something we mentioned before. Joe Biden is planning to replace the entire federal fleet of 645,000 cars and trucks with American-made electric vehicles. And shortly before he made this announcement, we saw many key figures in Washington, D.C. all of a sudden pile onto Tesla stock. What an amazing coincidence, not to be believed. There are a couple of problems with this. Right now, our country does not have the surplus electric generating capacity for those 645,000 cars. And despite all the talk about how clean electric vehicles are, the reality is that most of them are being recharged from oil and coal-fired power plants. And there's yet another problem with this idea of going all electric, which, by the way, I love electric cars. I love the idea, but it's not being implemented very, very well. The biggest problem is that if you look at the way an oil refinery works, It's not like the oil goes in one side and you turn a selector switch and you say we get, diesel fuel or bunker oil or lubricants or whatever. Basically, the cracking tower is putting out those distillates no matter what you do here. And one of those distillates is gasoline, which means if all of these cars and trucks go electric, if all the country goes electric, where's all that gasoline going to go? Are they just going to set it on fire and burn it off like they do the surplus methane at the top of those refineries? Are they going to use it to power new generating stations? It's not really going to affect the climate or the environment at all because they really have not thought this all the way through. And that's been my big complaint with the government for many years now, is they always have these great ideas that sound wonderful around election time, but they've never really thought them through. All right, we're going to start taking phone calls now. We're going to begin with Terry in California. Hello, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, it's nice to know that there's a nutraceutical out there that can increase my prayer power.
Yes.
So if I get in trouble with God, I can just take one of Dr. Horowitz's pills.
Yep.
And he'll boost up the volume so I can get in God's face.
Yeah.
And you must think we're all just as gullible as the Zionist Christian people he relies on. And just my comment in general might be considered anti-Semitic.
Well, it's certainly a colorful commercial. And we all have our opinions about it, which, because we work for Republic Broadcasting, we tend to keep to ourselves. But it is definitely an interesting spot.
Yeah, I know your hands are tied because he's one of your advertisers. Anyway, That's my comment for the day, Mike. Appreciate you taking my call. Bye.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to take a break for station identification. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I got two things, Michael. I'll be really quick. I can get it done in 3 minutes. First off, when you spoke of the 15 Republican senators that might, by their absence, recuse themselves from having to vote, one of I think you're probably onto it, really, Mike. Yeah. And one of the things that is apparent to me is that the Republicans have shown themselves, for the most part, to be total creatures of the deep state, and they totally sold out their own base, their president, everybody else. And they know that in the largest election, at least for voter turnout, that they say, and when you and I and probably everybody out there knows that more than half of them voted for Trump, more than half of those voters, all those voters who voted for Trump, know that they were betrayed by the Republicans. They're being betrayed now.
Yes.
So not only can they not have Trump out there, doing as a political force or anything, they simply can't have that voting bloc out there. And in order, if they can convict Trump, which looks pretty likely to me.
Unfortunately, yes, they're going for a vote tomorrow morning.
Then it's not only Trump, but it's also a way to demonize the 74 to 80 million, whatever it was, that voted for him.
Yes.
For them to continue the attacks and to break up this, and the Republicans are buying off on it because they don't want those people out there either. They know they've lost them. So these people have to be disabused, demonized and marginalized and criminalized, even if they can do it. And one way to do it is to get them, they're criminals by association for having supported Trump. So that's the first thing, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that before we go on to number 2, which is quick. But
okay, well, we're not in a rush just yet. We still got a good part of the show to get through. Right now, I don't consider myself being part of the Republican Party any longer. I'm certainly not part of the Democratic Party. I am, in fact, looking for a new, slightly right of center party to emerge, whether it's the Patriot Party or the much rumored Trump Party. but I'm certainly never going to support either the Republicans or the Democrats ever again. In fact, in this basically caving to the deep state, I think the GOP has pretty much destroyed itself.
I do too, Mike. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. The Republican Party left me a long time ago. And I simply am for peace, fiscal conservatism, the Constitution, the rule of law.
Yes.
Equal opportunity, equal rights under the law. Not equivalent, but equal.
Yes.
And all that. But the second thing I want to go into is because I was pretty hard on the red tails, and I think I sent you the backup information that corroborated that. But
yes, you did.
But I want to point to something that was that they have a right, and they have a right to be proud of it. The black community has a right to be proud of them. They just weren't any war-winning group. They were actually below mediocre, but low mediocre. But nevertheless, they did their part. But let me point to something that is distinguished, and that was in the First World War, when there was a black division, the 92nd, that got split up because Pershing was segregated, and half of people were sent to be stevedores. The other half, several regiments, were consigned to the French. They carried French rifles. They wore French uniforms with a U.S. collar sticker on them. And these several regiments really distinguished themselves under French leadership, of course.
Yep.
And so for all the people out there, I'll give credit where credit is due. And these guys deserved it. Red Tails were average on the best of days. They were average, and I don't want people, history being rewritten. But here's
okay. Well, let me offer you a counter argument here. There's a movie out right now. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Hidden Figures, and it's about the early NASA mathematicians who tended to be women of color. And they'd gone to college. They were brilliant mathematicians, and they were pretty much indispensable up until the advent of computers. And interesting story, and I heard this when I was at NASA before the movie came out. When John Glenn was getting ready to launch into orbit, and he said, who's done the orbital calculations? And they said, well, it was the IBM machine. And he says, I don't trust that thing. And I forget the name, but he said he wanted one of the colored women who was really good at these calculations to go through them and verify it. And she went through and verified and said, yes, the computer is right. And Glenn got into his capsule and roared into history.
Well, that's according to the movie, too, and I'm not...
No, I heard the story before the movie. I heard all of this before the movie.
Well, yeah, but when you consider, Mike, how many people were involved in the Apollo and the Gemini and the Mercury program and everything, 100,000, whatever? All these professional
by the time it got to Apollo, yes, but actually the Mercury program, if anything, it was undermanned. They hadn't really been given much of a budget. They weren't really considered a high priority item until Yuri Gagarin went into orbit and embarrassed the entire country. And then all of a sudden the money started coming in to let them buy things like IBM computers.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were the same age, Mike. I remember that. I didn't spend any time at NASA, but and I don't know enough to say, get an informed opinion about this, but let's face it, there were thousands and thousands of the most gifted engineers and mathematicians in the world working on this. And I'm not taking away their due, but, a couple of paraprofessionals, which is the positions they were in, and the whole, I just don't know. And based on the whole political correctness of the whole time that we're in, I reserve my judgment on that, but certainly possible. But I can tell you that this broken up 92nd Division, that was the real deal, and I'll definitely give them that. But I think it's open to question the Hidden Figures deal.
Like I said, when it was all happening, these women were treated, there was segregation, they were treated very, very badly, but looking back on it, their contribution was indispensable. By the way, it turns out that Project Mercury had a workforce of 18,000 people.
Okay. Interesting, but they were some of the best I can imagine. Some of the
well,
best
don't forget, these ladies graduated with honors from college.
And so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Anyway,
I understand.
let's
I mean,
okay.
that's the narrative, anyways.
I think they're due a tip of the hat. That's just that's where I come from, and maybe the Red Tails weren't the war-winning unit, but again, it took a lot of guts. First of all, to break the color barrier with the help of Mrs. Roosevelt, Eleanor, and then to actually then get up there in the plane and do what they did. Anyway, listen, Peter, we're going to let you go.
Agree.
Yeah, okay, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Joe in California. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I think if Peter was named the chief academic advisor to Black History Month, it would become Black History Day.
Ooh, that's got to hurt. That's got to hurt. Okay.
Yeah, we love you. We love you, Peter. Mike, if only this newfound regard for mediocrity in the schools was the case during my high school days when I failed Algebra 2.
Yes. Yeah, where was all this forgiveness back when I was in school?
Yeah. Last 2 points. You talked about this story about the police recruiting. I think it was PBS you mentioned. The PBS recruiting. The police should recruit more overweight black women. Did I hear you correctly?
Basically, they think they're going to make better officers than the young hotshots who seem to be pulling the trigger an awful lot. But again, I want to point a finger at prescription antidepressants. There was a study done in Florida where police tend to be on these drugs far more than the average population. And if you go to ssristories.com, you will see all these testimonials about the side effects of antidepressants that can lead to violence and unpredictable behavior.
Right, but the problem with the police departments, and I think it still applies, is the system itself. I assume they're still doing their training in Israel. So
they're not training in Israel, but they're hiring Israelis to come over here and train the police departments.
Oh, okay, or hiring Israelis. So no matter who you recruit.
Yeah.
Right. So, in no time, we'll have overweight black women kneeling on suspects. Now, that would cause a hell of a lot of casualties. We're staring at a real epidemic.
Well, the overweight black women are going to have to catch the suspect first, and I think that's kind of the flaw in the thinking here.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. So, and I think a lot of suspects, potential suspects, would just be carrying maybe some chocolate bars or candy in their car. They could just use that as a bribe.
Donuts. No, it's donuts. That's the natural food of the police officer is a donut.
Last point, and then you can let me go.
Okay.
I have friends on the East Coast. The wife has a pre-existing condition. She got the vaccine or the gene therapy. Her 2 college-age kids got the vaccine. The husband has no pre-existing conditions, but he does travel internationally for his job. Get this. He lied to the clinic or whoever was overseeing the vaccine, that he was overweight and he needed to get the vaccine because of his condition of being overweight. And before going to get the vaccine, he stuffed his clothes, whatever, with something or some things to make himself look fat, overweight, and he got the vaccine. He got the shot. I would never get the shot, but look at the lengths that this guy went to get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's desperation. Anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Mo in Florida. Hello, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Just a couple of comments, and I have a couple of questions. I hope you can hold me over. I haven't called in for a while because...
Well, we got a lot of room before the next commercial.
Okay. Well, I just thought of a new T-shirt I thought I might get printed up, and that's like, it's so cute you think your vote counts.
That's a good one. That's a good idea.
But what I really wanted to talk about was, I want to talk about Snowden just a comment,
Yeah.
and then about Biden and Trump. But I watched Snowden on a video where he was talking about how 9/11 was caused by Al Qaeda.
Yes.
Anybody that does any research in this at all knows it had nothing to do with Al Qaeda.
Of course.
And that's what makes me think Snowden's he's a CIA, shill. I really think he is. Not Assange. And I think the reason why Snowden wasn't pardoned and Assange, neither of them were pardoned, because I think that he couldn't pardon Snowden and Assange, because that would blow his cover if he pardoned Snowden. But I think Snowden's a shill. You think he's a phony? How could anybody who's supposed to be that bright think Al Qaeda had something to do with the World Trade Center? Yeah, they went in there and planted bombs months ahead of time. We all know it was Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the neocons. Everybody that does any research knows it. And you got to be an idiot not to know that. But anyways, that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, get your opinion. Are you familiar with, I'm sure you are, with Neuralink?
Yes.
With Elon Musk?
Yeah.
The brain interface?
Yep.
I remember when Biden was talking about, they cut half my head off, and he had a couple brain operations. I was thinking, ever since I heard that, and I knew about the Neuralink, and this was some time ago, but we all know that, they're way ahead of when they announce this stuff. But the guy, I don't think he has Alzheimer's. I think he has a brain implant. I think it's, when I first thought that, I thought that's so, nobody's going to buy this. But when you look at the Neuralink and how it does make that brain interface, that's very possible because the technology's there. Elon Musk admitted it. I think this guy is just in control remotely. I mean, why not?
Well, I'd like to say that I prefer to go along with the idea that he's just simply brain damaged and incompetent. I don't know that the Neuralink technology is that far along because you're talking about having a system that is able to control an entire human being along with speech and everything else to try, to accomplish that. The only thing that you might do, though, is wire his brain pleasure center so that when he does as he's told, he gets a little internal orgasm or something. And if he doesn't do what he's told, then things start to hurt. That's about the level that the technology is at right now.
No. I've been to the website and I've listened to their spiel, and that is what they say is available, is possible now. But I'm just saying, I think they're a lot more advanced than we know. And here we have a guy in there that's acting like a freaking robot. He'll sign anything, do what he's told. Maybe it is what you say. Maybe it's a pain pleasure thing. But I'm just throwing that out there. Here's a guy that's had numerous brain operations, and everybody says he's got Alzheimer's. I think he's just, there's something else going on. It's a possibility. But anyways, my next question was to you, and I think that you know who Max Egan is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Max Egan. I mean, he's a good guy over there in Australia. He mentioned an interesting point. He said that maybe, and he doesn't know. He's just throwing this out there. And I thought it was kind of poignant with when you look at what's going on in with the political parties. That Biden's going to really fall on his face here. And the country's going to just, with inflation, with the border crashing, the economy, everything. And people are going to clamor for Trump to be back. We know that more than half the country voted for Trump, even a lot of the Democrats. They're clamor for their dictator. Now, this was his thoughts. And I thought, you know what? And, and once Trump gets in there, they're not going to argue with anything because we'll be in such a sorry state. And this was all planned out ahead of time. That's I thought he threw that out there, and I thought, wow, that guy can. I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, again, I'm looking at the Neuralink website right now, and it looks like it's still very much in the initial fundraising, technological development area. So I have to say that I look at your theory with a certain degree of doubt and skepticism. And I wish I could say it's absolutely impossible, but no, I can't say that either. I really do think, though, that we don't need to worry about some kind of a computer link to get Biden to do what others want him to do. He already made that deal to become president. And yeah, I mean, we saw that video where somebody threw a form on the resolution desk, and Biden said, "I don't even know what I'm signing," and somebody off camera said, "Sign it anyway," and he just went ahead and did it. So he's a figurehead. He gets to be president of the United States of America, but the key decisions are being made elsewhere, and Biden knows it.
And he's had two admitted brain operations where they cut half his head off. Well, maybe. Who knows? What do you think about the Trump situation where people are going to be so desperate with whatever, with the disastrous world economy, and they're going to clamor for Trump to come back, and that will be the coup de grace. That will be the Hitler. What do you think about that?
I don't, there's going to be a crisis coming. That much is obvious. I think during that crisis, I don't know that people are going to go back to Trump because the Democrats are just going to spend every waking moment damaging his brand. But the American people are going to be looking for somebody that they perceive as genuinely interested in the welfare of the nation and the American people, not just some billionaire who's out on a lark. And I don't know who that individual is going to be, but somewhere out there, there has to be, the American equivalent of a Mahatma Gandhi who can unite the nation and really genuinely want the nation to be better. Okay, anyway, we got to take a break for commercials. Mo, thank you very much. We're going to let you go, and we'll be back with more phone calls. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to Brendan in Wisconsin. Hello, Brendan. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Are you? Am I coming through okay out in the boonies here?
You sound wonderful.
Excellent. Hey, it's good to know that I've talked to you many times throughout the years. Pre John in Barbados, Dustin in New Jersey, and I appreciate very much what you have done over the years. I didn't even know who you were back in like 2006 or something, but there was a bobblehead doll made of you, by the way.
There was. Wow, I wish I could find it. I'd buy one.
There were these things called truther toys. Yeah.
I remember those. They weren't really created. It was just illustrations. And I have one, as a matter of fact. Yeah,
the illustration was phenomenal because it looked real to me.
Yep.
So, but
I used that as my Facebook.
And I thought, wow, this guy really has a really good salt and pepper goatee with spiky hair. Never heard of him before. He makes a lot of sense. I disagree with him on one particular topic, and that's about it.
Okay,
and
well, if you agreed with me 100%, I would advise you to seek mental help immediately.
I know. That being said, I have family all over. I have a Hoosier father, many Hoosier uncles, and Hoosier aunts, Hoosier cousins. I'm so glad that you are in the great state of Indiana. I think at one point I tried to convince you to come to Wisconsin, and I will say that to any good patriot that Wisconsin is a great fallback spot. Anyhow, that being said, there is so I linked onto it via an RSS site. It was a progression of a former RSS site. Where you were placed center, second row. Now you're still center and like fourth row down or something like that.
Okay.
And but my friend Shep Embellis that I met at Bilderberg 2012, he had it linked, and then I think it was through maybe Natural News, Mike Adams.
Yes.
So the person is a doctor, an oncologist who is much younger than I am, and wow, that name really rung familiar to me. Well, golly, it's my ex-employer's daughter.
Okay.
And it's a sad story because she She was pregnant with her second child. They are of Native Indian blood. Quechua is what their mom taught through the School of Anthropology, tenured. Anyway, took the so I don't know which COVID shot she took, but her we used to know her as Sarita, but her name is Sarah, and the last name is Ponce, Ponce, which is Spanish, as you know. She, at the end of her most recent tweet, I guess, said, vaccines still matter, whatever, some hashtag. And it just blows my mind. So I have, in Indiana, Mike, I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 MDs. Well, one has just passed on. But people who were at Mayo Clinic's HQ, can't go into the names or anything like that. Also Cleveland Clinics, also Case Western, and the most sought after OBGYN in Indiana, retired. But on Family Zoom, okay, so that'll be like 30 people. And that's the only way you can actually talk to them anymore. We have centenarians that I might not ever see again, and they'll say things on Zoom which are AMA approved and then back channeled. They'll kind of tacitly admit, I have some concerns. So,
well, concerns are definitely valid here because, they'll come out with a new medication, they'll declare it's safe, it's free from harm, and then they find out somewhere down the road that, there was a problem with it, thalidomide being one of the worst examples of that. And and we know, the 1976 swine flu mandated vaccine wound up killing 50 times as many people as the flu itself did. And we're starting to get into those kind of numbers here. Now, that being said, I do want to point out, it seems right now the majority of people getting these vaccinations are not suffering any harm from them, but there are enough adverse reactions where it is a concern. Anyway, Brendan, we got to take another break for commercials. I need to let you go. More phone calls when we come back. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. And before we go back to the phones here, I'm going to share a little personal story with you. And it has to do with long-term effects of medications, which are not known at the time. A lot of the sharp-eyed watchers have written in to comment about the condition of my teeth. And the reason for that is that when my mother was carrying me, she was given tetracycline, which at the time they thought was perfectly safe for a pregnant mother to have, and it was safe for the mother. But if you're my age and your mother was given tetracycline, you have soft teeth. They break very easily. It's like, they're always going to tell you that it's safe here. Now, first part of March, these are all going to be replaced, and there's going to be a grand unveiling. And, I'm hoping my two new teeth are going to look something like this, on my face mask here. And, we'll get that taken care of. It's expensive. I've paid less for cars here, but it's definitely overdue. Let's go back to the phones now to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day, Michael. Mike. Hold on. Michael. Good day to you, Mike. I just want to talk about our good friend there in California. The new face of our nation is a woman named Abrams, Stacy, with a split tooth. That's the new face of the nation. That's going to be our posters plastered everywhere. Hold on, Mike. I just drank some. That Cuban coffee, boy, espresso really gets you. Anyway, Mike.
Okay.
So, but and getting back to Peter in L.A., I just want Peter to know, if it wasn't for the Nazis, we would have never got a man on the moon. It probably took 30, 40 years longer. The Nazis are the reason we got to the moon. Werner von Braun in Operation Paperclip. So Peter needs to look at that. We can't be worried about if the Afro-Americans got us there. No, it was the German Nazis who got us there. And the Nazis got us to a lot of other places, believe it or not.
Oh, we got a lot of technology from the Nazis, like the Volkswagen, audio recording. After the war was over, they just plundered German science.
Well, Mike, the Germans did almost everything. Come on, they gave us a diesel engine. The Russians, when they won World War II, they took every bolt and everything out of Germany and brought it back to Russia because they had nothing. So they actually literally wiped out Germany. Who's kidding who? Now, getting back to that, and I want to really talk to Joe and what's going on with Joe, but I get over to Florida soon because they're going to lock the borders up here. They're just bumbling buffoons going to lock the borders down. He wants Mexico, the border of Mexico wide open. He wants to lock the rest of these states down. But going back to the Germans, Mike, in Nazi Germany, we did get to the moon because of them. And I'm going to tell you, so there's a caller in Carolina, he needs to know. The reason the Russians have this technology of rocketry with missiles that can go 5 times the speed of sound, those are all from Germans. You think the Russians had the brain to invent those missiles?
Well, the Russian equivalent of Werner von Braun was Sergei Korolev. He was, he was an associate of von Braun's, and basically when the war was lost, half the rocket scientists decided they wanted to go with the Americans, and the other half went with the Russians, and the Russians built the R-7 rocket, which was the foundation of their space efforts like Sputnik and Vostok. And von Braun, of course, came to the United States and refined the V-2 design, leading to more and more weapons, and then ultimately, of course, the manned space program. But they also had a lot of help from a lot of non-Germans. I mean, the Germans had come up with the propulsion system and making the rockets actually work, but there were other people involved in things like making sure they were going to go where they were supposed to go.
Well, that is correct, Mike. You're 100% correct. But, the Nazis, the Nazi party did give us jet engines, okay? They just give us turbines.
No, hang on, Tom. That's not entirely accurate. The jet engine was actually invented in Great Britain years before World War II, but it was treated as an interesting curiosity, not worthy of further development, and it basically languished there until the Germans came up with the Me-262.
That is correct, Mike. I was going to finish. Yeah, you're right. The English had a lot to do with a lot of great inventions too. The Scottish too. The Scottish were probably the greatest bridge builders in the world. But listen, and as far as the jet engine, yes, Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce was a big part of England having such a great Air Force, the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force. But look, there were Northern Europeans. Mike, like I told you yesterday, all those great people that came out of the Caucasus region, like you said, the Rus, they were Vikings. That's where it all started from, didn't it?
Yep.
Mike? Okay.
Well, that's where Russia started from, was the Viking tribe.
Well, so did the Norwegians and the Swedes and all that. All of the northern even England was conquered by the Vikings. Right. That's what I was saying. Yes. England and Scotland and all that. Even Irish, I believe. But anyway, getting back to that, Mike, now what I want to talk about is to the one caller, listen, you need to, now they're talking here. This bumbling buffoon wants to lock down the state of Florida. Mike, if that's the case, then I think it's fine. But you know what? We need to lock this whole country down. One illegal that steps foot across our border, our southern border, is going to be deported back to their country of origin. We're going to start giving them their money down there. We don't need them over here. They don't speak English, number one. That's a big issue. If you don't speak English, it costs a lot of money to teach somebody to speak English and to actually identify as a English-speaking cultural figure who wants to love this country and its liberties and its justice for all, the freedoms. Yeah. These people are not. Look, Mike, right now, like you've been saying for over a year, I can tell you've been saying it, we're getting balkanized. More and more every day, this country's balkanized. It's got to stop and desist. We are going to be like Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are going to be like Yugoslavia, which is going to be all-out ethnic war. Now, with bumbling buffoon, better realize this, that he keeps allowing this, he's going to. Look, that thing that happened at the Capitol was a joke. That was a panty raid, like our great caller from Alabama said. But, Mike, we are being transformed into a banana republic. Absolutely, we're becoming a banana republic. Look at California, Californians. I don't give a darn what you call them. This guy Newsom needs to be thrown out on his ass, okay? He's allowed that state to be the land of milk and honey to be a land of despair and disgrace. Now, and the pig Pelosi gets away wanting to charge people, fine them with masks, and she walks in a beauty salon. That pig, and she says she's a Catholic. She's a good Christian. Yeah, right. You want abortion, you want homosexuality running rampant. She's not a good Christian. She's demonic as hell, Mike. Who's kidding who here? Now, getting back, Mike, real quick. I know you got our call, but I'm going to make it quick. And I drank my coffee. Listen, Mike, this
I need some of that coffee. I really do. Okay.
The Democratic Party, Mike, which is the face of Stacey Abrams' split tooth, okay?
Yes.
She's the narrative, the split tooth in Georgia. Look, they stole Georgia by bringing Chinese in there of all things. They brought away 80,000 Chinese to turn that state to a blue state. Who's allowing all this nonsense? Where are the white patriots who are saying, hey, man, you're taking over your country. You're not going to have a country no more. You are going to be another Cuba, Venezuela. You morons, you dingbats. You're going to allow these people to keep coming in here. And if, Mike, I'm not saying that you say it, I won't say it. But if there's one ethnic group that's splintered, it is between, you know what people those are, Mike? Between the men and the women. You know who they are. And that's got to be an issue that's got to be dealt with in 2022 here. Because, Mike, we cannot allow this country to keep hemorrhaging with these millions of illegal immigrants coming in here. They're not out for guys like you and me, I can tell you that right now. They're not out to make our lives better. They're coming here. They're not coming to compliment, Mike. They're coming here to take your job and eat your lunch and take your job. They're whatever. They're trying to take over your country.
Yes.
Take your job and eat your lunch. That's exactly what they're doing. And you know what, Mike? If you don't stop it, and we don't, like what one great caller says, if we don't have a moratorium for at least 10, 20 years, a moratorium on all immigration, I don't care where you come from. We lock our, like bumbling Biden wants to worry about the Wuhan flu now, the Hong Kong communist flu, whatever you call it, the Wuhan communist, I don't know what the heck you call it anything anymore, Mike. But, it is a disaster we've allowed this. And bumbling Biden's on tape saying that Trump is being xenophobic and racist for not allowing these Chinese to come in here when this was happening in February last year.
I remember.
It's absurd, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, you remember, and everybody remembers. It's absurd. Now, Trump is out on the fence, and now he's going for another impeachment when the Democrats who allowed angel mothers and fathers to lose a loved one, Mike. Like I told you, if one of us lost a loved one, you wouldn't be able to keep us calm, any of us on the Cause Your Show, Mike, to be calm and cool and collective. We would all be exploding if one of our family members got hurt by an illegal alien, let alone any idiot. By the way, did you see the woman who got shot 19 times on the expressway?
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, she was a model. She was a model, and supposedly, the story is the craziest thing I ever heard. You have to check it out, Mike. But they found her on the off-ramp of the turnpike, shot 19 times. She had 19 bullets in her, and really beautiful girl. She was like an older model, but she did a bunch of commercials on TV. People won't even know it, but she did a lot of TV commercials. A lot of commercials that you would see on TV, she did them, and they found her body, I think that was 3 days ago. She was murdered on the turnpike. It's all over the news. I forgot her name. Really, she was a model. I think she was Miss Manhattan or something. She won the New York title or something, but they found it. But and they found out, they caught the guy who did it. Wait till you'll see it. Just read it and you'll understand. But anyway, Mike, getting back to what I want to say quickly, real quick, I know. Look, Mike, what's going on with this immigration situation, what the Democrats are trying to do with Trump with impeachment, all this is demonic. It's as demonic as HE double two picks, Mike, because the Democrats are getting a lot away with. Look, 4,800 Americans were murdered by illegal aliens, Mike, in a 5-year period. They don't. How many Afro Americans were murdered by other Afro Americans last year in 2020, Mike? What is the FBI statistic?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's a lot.
It's insanity, Mike, and it's continuing. Matter of fact, this weekend, Mike, you see how many more shot in Chicago?
Yes.
Another 24 shot in Chicago over the last weekend this past. Now we're going on another weekend. Every weekend over there. Where's that Pritzker imbecile? Where's the National Guard there in that city? Mike, where is the National Guard in Chicago?
Should be there. Should definitely be there.
They should be there. They got the National Guard. They're walled off Washington, but they don't wall off Chicago. You kidding me? That's insanity what's going on here. All those Democrats, like you've been saying, Mike, with Title VIII, they should all have been arrested. And if I ever saw that Eric Trump or that Don Trump or any of those Trumps, I'd say you idiots had the opportunity to straighten out this country with that when they allowed that mayor in Oakland to get away with what she did, tipping off those illegals that the feds were coming to arrest them for breaking all kinds of federal laws in Title VIII. And Trump did not act up on that. Now look what he's going through. Impeachment.
He absolutely should have. Yep.
He should have full force one in there and say, you know what, you're arrested, lady. You're coming with me. You're going to jail for Title VIII. And that's what happened, Mike. The Democrats, these Zog, are running our country, and it's not going to last much longer, Mike, because it's going to get real bad. I still predict, Mike, I'm going to make a prediction. If this isn't settled out in 9 months, I think by this time next year, you're going to see this country in a CW, Mike. I hope not. I pray not. I love this country. I love my founding fathers. I love all freedom-loving Americans, man. But I tell you right now, Mike, there's a lot of people in this country who hate this country and want to take it down to its knees. And they're doing a hell of a job right now.
Yeah, and the globalists are a big part of that, unfortunately. We're standing in the way of their one world government.
Yeah, George Soros paying $2,000 for these protesters. He should be put in jail right away. That should have been national headline news that George Soros was arrested, like the Hungarian government said. When we catch this guy in Hungary, we're going to arrest him. The Hungarian prime minister said if we catch this Soros in Hungary, he'll be arrested.
Let's just grab him, throw him on a plane, and fly him over there and kick him off on the runway.
Yeah, Mike. The only thing I got to say is I'm gonna lower my coffee consumption a little bit tomorrow or next week when I call in. I'll lower it down to.
I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Okay.
You got it, Mike. I just love talking to you. All right, you have a fantastic weekend, Mike. Okay, you and Claire.
All right, same to you. Stay warm, stay safe. It's going to be a rough weekend going into next week here. We're going to switch over to Dan in Washington State. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. It's hard to follow Tom because I'm not quite so enthusiastic or interesting about stuff.
Energetic.
But I try. Real quick, I'm glad you guys got in that globe debate because it forced me to go on Google Earth for the first time. And it's a really awesome program. I was spending
it is. It really is. And, it was originally a private company that called itself Keyhole, which sort of tells you where it originated. But yeah, Google bought it and they've added features to it. And it's a wonderful teaching tool. And I use it all the time. I do world tourism virtually. I go out and look at the Taj Mahal and the Potala and, all these other things that I would love to visit and will never get the chance to do.
It was kind of funny what the caller from Austin said. He's like, the guy from Canada apparently didn't know the Earth was round. That's kind of what I was thinking, because I go on there, I'm like, yeah, it's a globe, right? I mean, I had a globe. When I was a kid, I had a globe. Maybe I was spoiled or something, but I always
I had a globe when I was a kid, but they kept moving the lines on it, and so I finally gave up trying to keep up with that. And it's a good thing about Google Earth is every time there's another war, they'll change those boundaries and borders for you real quick.
Hey, real quick on the politics, I think I agree with Tom a lot. I don't share his fear of Texas turning blue anymore because, look, I think Trump was kind of a disaster in a way. I think he took the American First movement, which was Charles Lindbergh, and Charles Lindbergh was against the central bank. He was against the war. And, other than that, he wasn't a hardcore, like, libertarian or anything. But Trump took that and turned it into this just hardcore Zionist, just disgusting thing for Israel. And it's so now forever America First will be stained with just this philo-Semitic weird stuff, and I don't think Trump's foreign policy, even though he didn't start a war, I mean, you could say, in Yemen, a lot of people died because he was selling arms, and he might have had a plan to attack Iran. So on that front, and Q, I think he invented Q because he knew he was going to sell his people out. I think Q, the caller from Montana, you can hear kind of the insanity in his voice with this Q stuff. It's just like, look at what somebody does. Don't sit there and insinuate what you think they're going to do all the time. And that's why Trump made me nuts, because it's always like, what is Trump really doing? What's Q? It was just insanity. So, but look, the Republican Party was on record with Paul Ryan saying they want immigration to lower wages, and they've been doing that since the 1980s and Bush, and so that's why immigration. We need to look back at the last 4 years instead of like making fun of liberals. I mean, it's easy to make fun of liberals, but liberals won. and they win. And I think a lot of white men that should be liberals.
Let's be honest, they cheated there. Anyway, Dan, I got to let you go. We got to take a commercial break. We got a couple more calls. I'm going to try and get these last few calls in here. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program on this Powhana Friday. We're going to go back to the phones to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I wanted to talk about something else about the fat policewomen, but, which is a kind of a joke. But, I mean, police are basically a joke anyway because there's plenty of fat women and men on there right now. But that's besides the point.
Okay.
I want to answer you something what Tom just said. All right. The Russians are very smart people, okay?
Yes,
very
they are.
talented. And even during the Soviet Union, they built some of the best weapons, including weapons that destroyed the Nazis, like the tank. I think it was the T-34 tank, something like that.
Yes.
And they had excellent airplanes and everything else. Once they got their act together, once Stalin started realizing they had to start acting as patriots, not as a bunch of communists. Okay, at least he got realistic there. And they had one of the best generals, maybe the best general of World War II in Zhukov.
Yes.
Who pulverized the war machine. So they did not need, so they are very good in things like rockets and other science like that. They're very smart people. One of the reasons, for instance, Israel has the kind of science they have is because so many people from Russia came over to Israel. Okay, and that's why brought a lot of that technology with him. So that's the thing. He thinks Western Europe and the northern what you call the northern white man or whatever he wants to call it. They're helping taking this country down. This country and the whole West. It's between what you call white Anglo-Saxon Protestants and what you call Ashkenazi Jews. Basically, that's what all the Council of Foreign Relations are made up of. That's what a lot of our leaders say are taking us down now. And you can go to Europe and look at Merkel, it's Macron, and others. Okay, they are discouraging births. Okay, that's why there's so low population in both Europe and in the United States. One of the reasons we probably are taking in immigrants because of that. Okay. And we're letting our morals go. We're letting our morals go. You want to treat a man like a woman and a woman like a man? That's why.
Mark, I hate to be rude, but I want to get this one last call in before the end of the show. Melissa in Maryland, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Okay, that was considerate of you. It's a short and sweet message that you should be open to. I just wanted to say that I think the events of the last month have more or less created a litmus test for who belongs in Congress. And so it's fair enough to say that everybody who supported questioning the electoral results that were presented on January the 6th, we can decide whether or not they should stay or go based upon their reaction to that. There was nothing wrong with questioning the electoral results.
I would agree. There's plenty of reason to question.
And
Melissa, I am so sorry. The music is starting. Melissa, would you do me a favor and call in early on Monday, and let's continue this discussion because I'd like to hear what you have to say, but we have run out of time. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back on Monday. Stay safe and warm during this weekend. Aloha, America.